Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when we tell stories, it's just so important to be able to learn from them. Otherwise, what's the point? And you know, if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. Uh, then if you are, subscribe. Hit subscribe to the podcast. Give us that like, give us the old 5-star rating, and find us pretty much on all major podcast platforms. We're over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, pretty much everywhere. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, you know, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, we're on the Instagram, we're on the TikTok, and we're on the Letterboxd for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because, you know, if we love to write about it and watch it and talk about it, guess what? We love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. It is very, very important. But something else that is very, very important. On this episode, we are talking about a brand new documentary which is available, which aired on CBC, but is also streaming now on the CBC Gem platform streaming service. It tells it tells an extraordinary story. I mean, we know of what has happened with Bill Cosby and the issues around him and sort of the sexual assault charges and the things that have happened. And this documentary, which is called The Case Against Cosby, it tells the extraordinary story of Andrea Constand, who is the only survivor of his sexual assault to actually gain a conviction against him. It is an important and fascinating film because it's one of those things where when you see it reminds us that we need to redefine sort of our definition of serial predators and serial attackers and, you know, rapists, murderers, what have you, because these people in many ways are all around us, and it's important to sort of stay aware and be sort of omnipresent of these sort of things. But in advance of this airing and also being available on CBC Gem, like we said, we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with the director Karen Wookey and Andrea Constand herself to talk about the making of the film, the importance of the story they wanted to tell, and so very much more. But like I said, if you are listening here in Canada, and if you don't already have CBC Gem, what are you waiting for? Please go sign up for it now. It's free. But do that and watch The Case Against Cosby. But first, enjoy our talk with the director Karen Wookey and also the subject, Andrea Constand, because it's an important conversation that we had, and it's an important film too. So please, well, series. It is a series, but it's 2 episodes, but it's sort of pieced into one. But it's important. Check it out. Like I said, on CBC Gem, but check out our interview first because it's a darn good one. All right. Well, obviously, first off, just thank you both so much for the time today, and I mean, and congratulations on the work on sharing. Obviously, this very important story.
Thank you. We
Now,
appreciate that.
Karen, I guess my first question is for you. Like, walk me through, I guess, the early days of getting involved with this project, and definitely wanting to tell Andrea's story.
I've known Andrea for quite a while, and when she let me know that she'd written a book, I read it, and before I even finished it, I called her to say, you know, this needs to be a documentary. This is a story that needs to be told. So I called my business partner and said, we need the rights to this. I mean, it was obvious. First of all, her story alone is so extraordinary, and her character is so compelling. Always wanted to, I've always understood, and the the process of trauma and how this affects not only the person who's victimized, but the people who love them, the collateral damage that's done in families, in culture. And this was the perfect story because it's Bill Cosby there's a million Bill Cosbys out there that are store managers and bosses and, neighbors. However, this story was so compelling because it was an opportunity to really look at how trauma affects us all and what it does to families, which is what Andrea was in total agreement with. And I think from the moment we started, the film kind of came together and it was clear that it was time that people would listen.
For sure. Andrea, were you on board with sort of telling it in the book and telling it on the news is one thing, but I can imagine having a camera in your face for a documentary is a completely different experience.
Yeah, that's true. But I felt it was so important to, to get like there will be people that read the book, but to actually watch a film, to actually see.
Sometimes her satellite freezes.
Oh, so yeah, no, what that healing path looks like in motion. I think it's important. It's uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. And the healing journey is a very uncomfortable path for the survivors, but also for people to watch as well. But I knew that it was important to bring it to light. And I couldn't have thought of a better person than Karen to do that.
No, and something.
Well, and interesting.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say the women, we interviewed many of the Cosby survivors to find the core group that would go through the process with Gabor. And I really feel that every one of those women, first of all, came with 150%. They were ready to do the work, but also I felt an audience would relate to at least one of those women in their space. And that was really important in watching them undergo what is an incredibly powerful and uncomfortable experience, but really the only path to healing. Because the story itself is so, dark, but also it could be, overwhelming, that there had to be hope at the end. And watching those women go through what they were so brave to go through. And I think many of them said within 10 minutes, they forgot about the cameras. I think helps an audience understand and relate to what it takes to come through that and become reclaim your life.
When did you, I guess both of you, come to the decision to sort of have this group session and to sort of really sort of capture this moment, because it's such a linchpin for the piece and it really sort of gives, I guess, that extra level of understanding.
Right from the beginning, for me, that was the most important part, to lay the background of the story over top of. And it was only Gabor that I have worked with Gabor and done his workshops. I know the type of work he does. So he first said no to me because he was so busy with his book. But when I told him what it was, he said, well, if you can bring everybody out here and I don't have to travel and you can do it in, 3 weeks, then I can do it. So we turned the entire schedule upside down. 2 of the women had no passports. We expedited their passports, got them across the border. It was insane, but it was the greatest gift because that was the first thing we shot, really. And so we understood where we were going, even though I had lots of pushback on it. And people even when they saw it in film, it was uncomfortable. But for me, it was the most important part of the story. Without that, it was a crime doc.
Well,
it's supposed to be uncomfortable. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Something else that
and also, to add to that, like, I think in this type, with what we wanted to accomplish with this film, you had to have that sense of community. You had to have that sense of the women coming together to heal.
Agreed.
And what that looks like, because the healing it happens in a community. It happens in a group of people. And that's why it's so powerful. That's why maybe you feel that way about it. Yeah.
Now, there is something else.
I'm very glad you responded to that.
Well, I'm glad too.
Especially as a man.
Well, no, but it's one of those things where in watching it, I not only appreciated just sort of the necessity for community and the necessity to talk. Because as a man, we're predetermined not to talk to each other about our feelings. That's a whole other film in and of itself. Yeah. But something that this project really does is not only emboldens the sense of community and really makes it important in terms of healing. But there is something else that I wanted to ask you both about, because I was struck by the fact that I found this piece really redefined the sense of what the picture of a serial offender, a serial rapist, a sex offender is. Because, I mean, obviously, when you say serial rapist, when you say sex offender, you think Jack the Ripper, you think somebody coming up from the fifth layer of hell. You know, you don't have this imagery. How important was it for you both to really hammer home that we need to redefine our image of what these offenders look like? Because, I mean, these sociopaths, like you say, are everywhere.
They look like our brothers, our fathers, our friends. And for me, the pivotal mind-opening moment, although I've always believed it, was reading Anna Salter's book. Anna Salter and Ann Burgess were in the film. Ann Burgess is the woman that Mindhunter is based off. She taught the FBI how to profile. These women have interviewed more predators than anyone else on the planet. And they really, by the end of it, you understand that Cosby's a run-of-the-mill. They all operate the same way. We think they jump out of, as you said, that they're going to jump out of bushes with an axe in their hands. No, they look like your father, your friend. And demystifying that and exposing how they operate is a really, really important piece in understanding how, first of all, it's all around us. It's not something, we are just, everyone is at risk. If they're among us, and they're our friends, and they present as our friends, and they present as, that's what they do. They mess with your head. They're nice to you before, they're nice to you after. You think you're the crazy one. That's the MO of every predator. And once we understand that, we're dealing with a completely different landscape.
Yeah, I think we need more of this. Our film just kind of scratches the surface. We need more of that, like exposing. I mean, I know there's been so many people like Weinstein and Cosby and Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, but yeah, we have to expose it. And I think that's what we wanted to do, but also so many other things too.
And let's not forget, men are, up until the age of 10, men are at risk for sexual assault. So it's important to recognize the system itself supports and minimizes, and has done for years. And as Gabor says in the film, it's working very well for the patriarchal. The justice system, the justice to find someone guilty of sexual assault, the defense's move is always just eviscerate the victim. You eviscerate the victim, then you don't believe half of what they say. And our go-to is to think that it didn't happen, or it didn't happen the way that they said, or that the perpetrator is not guilty. So the onus is on us to reveal that this is not only commonplace, but this is how it works. They look at Cosby. No one believed the women for years and years and years until Andrea's case. That sort of opened the floodgates, and suddenly, and even during the first trial, many people, didn't believe it, or believe it of him, or believe it. They were very quick to eviscerate the women in the public court of opinion, not just in the courts.
For sure. And I mean, it's one of those things where, at least for me in watching it, I got such a greater sense of not just the need to talk up, and not just the need to really be believed and to put these things forward, but at the same time understanding how inaction is such a trauma in and of itself, and how not being able to speak, how the patriarchy has set up this system and how it is broken. And I mean, I think one of the pullaways for me was, and I mean, Andrea, I'd love both your takes on this, but particularly Andrea, just in how, as much as this story was about your case and your fight, it is about so much more than that. Is that a pull-away that you want people to take from this piece? Yes. Because again, it's not one case, one result. It's something that's happening constantly.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
you go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I think overcoming that trauma, there is that sense of hope and inspiration. At the end of the story, where it's I've been, after all these years, I've been able to really conquer what's happened to me, but it's a process as well. You learn to manage your trauma over the years. You just learn to manage it. But I think one of the most important things, and I put it in the chat box, is that silence is really what makes us so sick and what keeps us in the trauma. And I think the important part about healing is that we've, yes, exposed the predator for who he is, but also to see these women, coming out of silence and what that looks like and what freedom looks like and what building your life looks like and what coming back with a purpose looks like and having the support that you need. That's so important in that community, to feel supported, to have great resources, emotionally be able to see themselves in the story, but also to see the women actually just like going through the process too.
Also important to remember that not everybody does survive. Many people do not come out of the trauma when the trauma destroys their lives. And so this was every woman's story. This was every predator's story. This was Andrea's story is all of our story, and it tells the story of our culture. And to quote Gabor describes this as, trauma is the water we swim in. We don't even see it. So it's so present and it's so everywhere. And the numbers are so high. I mean, there's very few people who haven't experienced it. So the purpose of the women in this story and Andrea's story, for every Cosby, there's tens of thousands, if not millions, of guys that just run the local store, or your boss or your brother's friend, or those are the stories that are equally important, or God forbid, what goes on reservations or, is still going on everywhere. So this story is an opportunity to wake up to the reality of all that we all live in, and hopefully ignite a desire to recognize it and change, because Andrea's right. Silence keeps us sick. It keeps our community sick. It keeps our culture sick. And really, she has it tattooed on her body. Tell someone.
No, Andrea, I have to ask you about the walking sticks that you made for the group. Yeah. It felt like a very cathartic moment for you in this process, because I can imagine to a certain degree, you were not only carrying your weight in all this, but you were carrying a lot of other people's weight at the same time. And like, how big of a moment was that for you to be able to sort of share this with other victims, other people who have been through the same experience that you have, to be able to, I guess, help give them the strength to find, be able to have others lean on them as opposed to you.
Yeah, that's, I started doing those walking sticks just before filming. It was just like one day I was out in the woods and I just started picking up sticks, and I was like, I'm gonna do something, like, these are just like, I'm gonna do something wonderful and beautiful with these. But it was actually the process, of taking the bark off, of getting my knife and really just like skinning the stick, and what that felt like taking dead skin off, like the process of just like exposing, something raw and so it's just like the whole process of working with the stick for me was really healing. So it was actually like funny that I chose to give everybody one of those, because it was like I was sharing a part of me, a part of my healing with them by giving them a stick and actually creating them and making them beautiful, and thinking, about just how we don't feel so beautiful when you're assaulted or violated. You don't feel so beautiful anymore, but to actually have that experience myself and to share that with the others, it was really just coming from my heart. It was just all from my heart. It was that I wanted them to have that, yeah. So I wanted them to have that, like, you can use this, you can have this stick. It means so much from my heart to yours. And I'm imbuing like support and safety and needing this. If you're ever struggling, whether you want to look at it or whether you want to take it on a walk with you, or whether you want to hit a raccoon with it, or like whatever, right? It was just like that. That's where it came from me, this is a part of my healing, a part of my journey, and then sharing it with them. But yeah, we didn't really plan it out. It just kind of all fell in place.
It just happened that the first day we shot, the only shooting we did before the retreat was a day with Andrea at her place, and it was spring. Nothing, the forest was dead, and she had just started sort of picking these sticks up and doing it. And I'm like, oh, well, let's go follow you. And We did. We followed her. And in the time between then and the retreat and the end of the film, Andrea took it to a whole new level and was making these incredible things. And it just evolved with the process. And so we filmed it because it was such a fantastic metaphor.
Well, and I mean, it's a metaphor for it really is for the entire project.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting those sticks out to BC was no small feat, let me tell you.
No, I mean, for both of you, and I mean, Karen, like specifically for you, because I mean, like you said, this could have very easily just been another true crime piece and just sort of faded into the background. But it's so much more than that. And I mean, at the end of the day, how important is it to be able to tell this story, but tell it in such a way that, again, it's not about breaking down the particulars of a crime. It's breaking down sort of the aftermath thereof and sort of the pain and the trauma and how people have to overcome it when it's thrust upon them.
Well, to be brief, I mean, that was from the very beginning, the bigger part of the story that I felt was the most important. I had experienced something similar in my family. It happened to my older sister. She didn't survive. I saw what it did to my family. I know many people, and I've been in the room many times with traumatized people. I produced intervention, and every single time I'd hear a parent or a sibling go, well, why can't you just get over it? You know, maybe now you can put this behind you. I mean, I remember being in the room when Andrea spoke at Cosby's parole hearing, which, by the way, he didn't get parole before he was reduced. And Andrea's mother, who I love and adore and who loves her and supports her, you know, the first thing she said was, maybe, Andrea, now you can put this behind you. And I thought to myself, the world doesn't understand. You can't just put these things behind you. It's a process. It's a much bigger, the impact is so huge and takes so much courage to kind of navigate. And many don't survive. That's the story that needs to be told so that people understand why it plays out like it does, why these people are damaged, how big of an effect it has on people's lives. Maybe we'll look at a lot of sex offenders get very little time or get very little, they're very quickly acquitted. And maybe if we understood the effects that this has on people and families, we'd look at it differently. So that's what, from the very beginning, we hope to achieve.
Well, and I mean, I think you've both done that and then some, because really, to me, in watching this, it not only highlights the ongoing trauma and sort of the I don't want to say, why don't you get over it, but the why you don't get over it, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it.
Yes.
And just how broken the system is, and how even when people do speak up, I mean, I almost blame the news cycle on this, because we'll see something in the news and we'll dismiss it and we'll go on. It's a reminder to sort of read and pay attention and be aware, as opposed to just, going click or swiping left or right or whatever you have to do on your daily news feed to sort of understand the impact of so many of these stories that are happening on a day-to-day basis.
Well, Gabor said it perfectly. Gabor said it perfectly when he was around the fire. And everyone was saying the system is so broken. And he said, no, it's not. The system works perfectly for the perpetrators. It keeps the powerful powerful, and it keeps the disempowered disempowered. And if you look at the world and you start shift your attitude a little bit, I mean, it changed all of us making this film. There wasn't anyone who worked on this film who wasn't changed by going through the process. And if you look at the world and you recognize, oh, meant to work that way. Now so now all you can do is wake people up and reveal what's really going on and reveal how predators really work and operate. And then you think about it totally differently.
And if enough people have the light bulb go off, then maybe some real change does happen. No, you're absolutely right.
Exactly.
But again, just congrats on the work, and just thank you so much for the time today. I was so struck when I got to watch this last night. I was so happy I got to see it, and I'm so happy to talk to you both.
Well, your questions are incredibly insightful and thoughtful. Yeah. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Congrats on the work.
Good question.
Thank you so much for the time today.
Okay.
Thank you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. You can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.